You're watching a TGM production. Hello and welcome back to Tom Mason the Interviews. Yes, the series where I interview people I interview people. I don't know what I was going to say there, but yes, there's words that could be used in English language, and yes, we've got more interviews upcoming in the pipeline, which is not a line or a pipe. And today I've got a very special guest. She's best known for currently starring in the brilliant, the outrageous, and the very gritty and very criminal Blue Lights in the one and only Andi Osho.
I am a big fan of that pipeline. Didn't see that coming.
Yeah. And so we shall start at the very beginning because Julie
Yes.
Andrews once said it was a good place to start, and the whole time I've been doing this, she's not been wrong. There's still time left. I'm very young. How did you get into the wonderful world I like to call acting?
Yeah. Um, so I had always wanted to do it from when I was
Yeah,
a kid, but just didn't think that it was something that was possible for somebody like me. And so I ended up working in TV post-production instead. And then it just got to the point where I was just like, you know what? I've got to give this a try.
yeah, yeah. And one of the things that occurred, it's the wrong word there, but has since been released is the better word for it. This week, yesterday to be more precise than any other word is where did the idea for your brand new book, Most Wanted, come from?
Um, so that came out of my own. So I should explain for folks who don't know, Blue Lights is about a couple who are trying to buy a property. They come up against a load of obstacles, and in the end, they decide that the best thing for them to do is to start a local crime wave so that it tarnishes the area,
Mm,
house prices fall, and then they'll be able to finally be able to afford something. So the idea for it, obviously, it's an absurd story, but it's a satire and it's really about how difficult it is to
yeah,
buy at the moment. And it came out of me spending 5 years basically looking for a property, realizing how kind of unethical, unfair the housing market is in lots of different areas. And then I was like, oh, that'll make a good story.
yeah. And when you're writing a book, and this is similar to some people I've interviewed when they're working on audio, but do you sit there and just write, or have you got something in the background that will help to inspire you to come up with other ideas for the story?
You mean like music and stuff like that?
Yeah, like music, TV, radio.
Oh, I would never have the right. Sorry, I can't turn off this what do you call it? You know, the center
Yeah,
stage thing. Oh, it's driving me mad, like looking at myself and just like making myself seasick. But anyway, so yeah, so I find the TV and rate like the idea of anybody
yeah,
talking in the background would I think that would be really distracting. So I do listen to music. I know some folks like they like to listen to like film scores and things
yeah,
like that. And I get that because it could put you in the frame of mind of the
yeah,
type of story you're trying to write. But for me, I just want something that's not gonna, just distract. So I just
yeah,
listen to very gentle jazz or something like that, something without singing on it.
yeah.
Yeah, none of that sort of experimental ba-doop-doop-doo, ba-doop-doop-doo, ba-doop-doo. Like
Yeah,
that would just
yeah,
like throw me off completely.
yeah,
I'd just get into that. So yeah, that I usually have stuff that's just like
yeah.
unintrusive in the background.
Yeah, and you wouldn't want experimental jazz on either when you're driving because you would probably crash. Uh,
Well, there is that.
yeah, yeah, and I think that's a sort of interesting because different types of music put you in different frames of mind, and I think when you listen to certain soundtracks from films, if you think of a film that you really like, that might have an emotional connection with you, and you might accidentally start crying and get the paper wet, or the laptop wet, instead of actually getting what a poor joke. But I think what's interesting is that, and I don't think I've ever said this because I just think it's odd that when my dad's driving, he listens to orchestral music because that keeps him awake. But when he listens to regular poppy rocky music, he falls asleep. I don't
Oh.
know what that says about him, but it. I mean, I thought classical music would make you fall asleep instead of keeping
Well,
you
I
awake.
mean, it depends what he's listening to. Because I mean, if he's got Ride of the Valkyries on or something like that, then probably it will keep him awake.
Yeah, it probably would. Uh, and so one of the other things you worked on in your massive career, um, and which is the correct term, is brilliant. Well, all of it's brilliant, but this one in particular is interesting because of the way that it went out, and then it had I wouldn't say it's a cult show, more I say, because it's more broader than that. But I think it starts off. I think you have to start off with a cult audience, and then once one person who talks too much then tells someone else, and everyone else is going to watch it because you're going to have to watch it if someone's talking about it. But what was it like working on the hilarious, funny, and quite fascinating Breeders?
Oh, Breeders. Yeah. I mean, it was brilliant,
Yeah,
because it was a sort of a comedy acting masterclass because, Daisy Haggard and Martin Freeman are just so funny. But
yeah,
actually the other cast as well, Patrick Baladi who plays, I can't remember the character's name, is it Darren? But anyways, he's supremely funny as well. So, and they all are. So, um yeah, it was really a gift to be able to watch them work, but also remember that you're there to,
yeah, yeah,
play a role as well. So I didn't want to get too distracted by that. But yeah, it was brilliant and it was so well received. And I really like I watched the first season of it before I'd been cast in it,
yeah.
and I was just like, this is amazing. The writing is
Yeah.
so sharp. So yeah, that
Yeah.
was a real gift.
And I think a show like that proves the point that Sky does produce excellent programming because not everyone either has Sky or not everyone assumes that Sky will produce incredible work because of so many other channels produce so many things and Sky seeming to be the one that airs all the American stuff, which is what it perceives from the outset. So do you think that having such excellent talent creates something that is uniquely British but then also works really well in America because it went over to America. Do you think that helps the show because it's got some excellent working around and it showcases that we've got a lot of excellent talent in the UK on a bigger budget than you might get on another channel?
Yeah, and I think also because a lot of the folks that are in it are known for, say, their movie work as
Yeah,
well. So Alan Armstrong, I think, would be a face that a lot of people in other countries would
yeah,
recognize. Obviously, Martin Freeman because of The Hobbit and Black Panther and lots of other
yeah,
things that he's done. So that really helps, I think, with those inter for the show to land in other international markets as
yeah.
well. But yeah, Sky have got a lot of money, so they can afford to,
Yeah.
get bigger stars as well.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that you can see that when you look at the history of Sky, you can see they put the money in the right place oh, I wouldn't say necessarily at the right time, like Trolleyed. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily say that's the most highest budget program ever, but it is one of the most weirdest, most quotable programs I can ever think of, such as the words Valcor serves you right. I've not seen the show in years, and that's the thing that's stuck in
Right.
my head. But I think
No,
that
it's yeah.
but I think that Sky's got that history of having excellent comedy. Do you think that that will serve not just breeders well, but will serve the British economy well? Because there's other channels that are splashing the extra cash to give a long line of comedy to help the comedy industry thrive more.
Yeah, I mean, you need broadcasters to take a chance because
Mm.
you want them, and you want there to be a spread of sort of subgenres
Yeah,
within that. So you don't want them to be going for one type of comedy. And if they have big hits, then that gives them the budget to take risks with other smaller shows that are
mm,
a little bit more experimental. But you can't guarantee that Sky, because it's a purely commercial
yeah,
entity, you can't guarantee that they'll do that. So that's why the BBC is really important because BBC can take a risk. They've got their mainstream, but they've
yeah,
also got smaller outlets like, BBC Three and BBC Two to an extent.
yeah,
So yeah, you want there to be a spread ideally because everybody's got different tastes when it
yeah.
comes to comedy. Some people love Mrs. Brown's Boys, and some people hate it, and some people
Yeah,
love Breeders. I'm sure there's lots of people that didn't enjoy it.
yeah,
So you want to give everybody a little bit of what they enjoy. Can't
yeah,
please everybody with one project, but you can please everybody
yeah.
maybe with a range of projects.
Yeah, and I think you're right in saying that, and I think the BBC does do that. And you can, if you look at the last year or so, you can find three different comedies that will satisfy three different audiences,
Yeah, yeah.
which is quite good. And I think Tim Davies did an excellent, and this is a plug for something else. I don't know why I'm saying it, but I am. That Tim Davies did an excellent interview with Richard Osman and Marina Hine on their The Rest of Entertainment podcast, and that was really fascinating because it showcased. Yes, there's some bad things that have happened within the BBC that you can't blame everyone for, but the BBC has its strengths, and we can see within comedy that there is strength. Like We Might Regret This is a new one that it pushes the boundary for disability representation on screen because it represents that there's different sides to disability. Like so, it's like you've got varied different points of view. So the Rosie Jones show on Channel 4's her side of her story, and We Might Regret This is another side of the same story. Do you think that that's what British comedy is doing really well at the moment? Is it's representing it's like the same type of community, but in different areas of that community?
Well, I think the important thing is giving ownership to the storytelling from those communities. And it's still a bit hit and miss with
Yeah,
that, I would say, that sometimes the gatekeepers look like they're allowing representation, but actually they're only allowing a certain type of
yeah,
representation that maintains a stereotype that people have had for a long time. So it is great that there's people from different communities um, getting exposure and being able to tell their stories. But what's really important is they get to tell the type of stories that they want to tell rather than that they're being allowed to tell. But it's a great start. It's better than nothing. And it's certainly better, specifically on the disability front, it's better than, an able-bodied person playing these roles because it's like we've seen that already, and it's not that there's something wrong with that because they it is acting, which a lot of people argue when it comes to playing things outside of who they are, but equally you want authenticity now, and you want to open doors so that people from different cultures can actually experience telling their
yeah,
story from their perspective rather than it being generated by somebody who's not from that particular culture
yeah.
or background.
Yeah, and one of the things you've worked on that it seems to me like, well, obviously it's never going to win. It seems to me like that there's certain types of TV shows and film, like James Bond. You don't need to explain why there's multiple different versions of the same fella. Or it might be a coincidence they're all called James Bond. And Doctor Who's got the regeneration. That's fine, right? And I'm not going to disagree with that. And that
No,
makes
yeah,
with the Doctor Who bit, the only bit out of those two that makes sense. And then this one has an explanation because it's not the same character; it's a different person in the same job role. And obviously it's this program, I am going to name in a second, that has multiple spin-offs. Uh, some of them are genuine, like might not link as much as you would think.
yeah.
Return to Paradise because Adler Hanlon is in it, but he's not. You don't see him as much to link together. But what was it like working on the very sunny but the very dangerous Death in Paradise?
Yes, okay, because I was trying to guess what one were you talking about? But it
Yeah,
does it does make sense because they're not saying it's the same person, it's a,
yeah,
a new detective
yeah,
has arrived from England.
yeah,
Death in Paradise is an institution, and actually there are times as a viewer where I don't want to watch hard-hitting
yeah,
drama where it's really it's just really heavy.
yeah,
And so I'll watch like a load of Death in Paradise and really, oh,
yeah,
it's just delightful.
yeah,
And actually, it's really well done. If you let go of the idea that obviously this is all ridiculous, like there would be a huge police investigation and you
yeah,
draft in police from other islands to solve this heinous crime. If you set all that aside, and also the fact that, they have these gorgeous suspect pictures. It's like, when did these people pose for these pictures?
yeah,
If you set all of that aside, it's a really well written show. Like the writers are so inventive with the murders, and the humor is actually really good. Like I've seen other shows that try to do the same thing
Yeah,
and they don't come anywhere near. So as absurd as it can be, it's actually, I think, having watched quite a few episodes of it
yeah,
now, I think it's a really good show. It's a really great space for Black performers to,
mm,
to have that representation. And as a cast member doing the show, it's fantastic because you're being part of an
yeah,
institution, and you get 2 weeks in Guadeloupe. You're in the
yeah,
Caribbean, so
yeah,
I'm not sure where what the downside is of
yeah,
doing Death in
yeah.
Paradise.
And I think that Lloyd Griffin, who's in the Australian spin-off Return to Paradise, he's also he loves working there because he gets targeted because he just nips over for a while and gets to enjoy the beautiful sun of Australia. But as an actor, do you think that Death in Paradise comes under the banner of there's Midsummer Murders, Doctors was technically, and there will be others, but do you reckon that Death in Paradise comes under the banner of have when other actors say, have you done a blank? There's a selection
Yes,
show they have. Do you think
right.
that that's the case?
Yeah, probably not quite as much because mo most of the actors that are going to be doing it are black. But
Yeah,
amongst black actors, certainly,
yeah,
yeah, there will be a sense of because I know someone who was on it recently, and they've been acting for a number of years, and they were like, finally, so
yeah,
it's
yeah,
almost like a rite of passage as a black actor. Obviously, they cast widely as well because there's people from different heritages and
yeah,
backgrounds in their storytelling. But
yeah,
yeah, I would say probably the go-to ones were EastEnders, The Bill, which
yeah,
isn't on anymore, Holby, and Casualty.
yeah,
Holby, unfortunately, isn't on anymore either. And as much as people might laugh at those shows or whatever, they were
yeah,
so important
mm,
for getting a foot
yeah,
on the ladder as an actor because you got to be a bit of a day player. It's a
yeah,
well-oiled machine, so everything's really super efficient and runs really smoothly. Everyone knows what they're doing. It's not lengthy take after take after take because they're quite, they move quite quickly. So you really get to cut your teeth in a safe environment that's got a history of great storytelling. So it's a real shame that Holby and The Bill
yeah,
and Doctors, they're not on anymore because they were great training for
yeah,
the for behind the
yeah,
camera as
yeah,
well. So
yeah.
yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah, and you mentioned there about someone you knew that finally got on to do Death in Paradise, and it reminds me, I was listening to Toby Haydock talk on a podcast earlier that his friend managed to get onto Doctors and he never got on it. He thought he was really annoyed because he thought him and his friend were the only people to not have done a Doctors. And then he found out from wherever that she got on Doctors and he's like, what? But then by that point, Doctors has ended and he can't do it. He's like, what? How have I not done a Doctors? But she's done a Doctor, and it made him rather annoyed because he loved the idea of of him and someone else he knew that hadn't done a Doctors. And I think that's what's I think good about having a long running show that's not too hard hitting because it gives everyone a chance, as we've said, to
Yeah.
train and learn, not just your actors but your crew. Do you think that that's what Britain's sort of like losing ever so slowly, that there's not as many training grounds, not just for actors and crew, but writers and everyone that's trying to get into this industry that's slowly, sadly, seeming like it's winding down.
It's not winding down, it's changing, but you're
Yeah,
absolutely right. It's they're so important because, like, as a director, if you're just coming off a training course, or actually, I think the BBC will funnel people into roles on EastEnders, on
mm,
Holby, on Casualty, on Doctors, because that's a great place for directors to
yeah,
learn, for writers to cut their teeth, and all the rest of it. So if those opportunities aren't there, where are people going to learn? Do they have to self-finance something? Well, that's only going to be possible for people who come from a certain financial background.
yeah,
So it does there are the entry points
yeah,
are getting narrower. So even though the industry might still be substantial
mm,
and there's opportunities with co-productions in other countries, so
yeah,
that's where some money can come in, the actual way into the industry is, I would say, getting narrower. Like
yeah,
I went to a talk the other day and they were talking about theatre. It was Theatre 503 that
mm,
supports exclusively new writing. And even there, they're saying like it's getting harder and harder for new playwrights to
yeah.
get a foot in the door.
Yeah. And do you think that having the online world being a sense of we're now at a point where if you want to make, I don't know, let's say a short film or a play or whatever, and
Mm,
you've got a rough amount of equipment like a phone or whatever, and you can just do
mm.
it. You can just release it, and then eventually someone might get into that because if you do enough of it, do you think that that will help new people get into the industry because there's a way that they can just start doing it now by themselves, and hopefully eventually someone in their chosen field might recognize them and adapt them to there.
That's a good point because I think the entry point to creating is very broad now.
Yeah,
Because as you say, if someone's got an iPhone and a decent mic, they can make something, get some friends together, and they can just make something. But actually breaking through into the industry is still quite challenging. But you're right that if people create, then there is and they share it, there is the possibility that it will get picked up, it will go viral. Someone who's a decision maker will see it, and then maybe something can transform from there. But it's everything's it's not guaranteed basically. So you just have to keep you as a creator, I think you have to be quite innovative these days, and you have to just keep trying different things until something sticks.
yeah. And what are the things that you've worked on that in recent time must have been I'm gonna say 6 months ago, might be when they announced it was returning. That it's a juggernaut of very much saying as many words in one sentence in an Irish accent as possible. What was it like working on the ever brilliant and ever very well Mickey taken out of by John Richardson? What was it like working on the actual Line of Duty?
The actual line of duty. It would have been more than 6 months ago. I think it was a couple of years now. Three. No, it's because it was during COVID. I
Yeah,
remember. Oh yeah, it was. Again, it was. It's an institution. It's such a beloved and talked about show
yeah,
that even just playing a little role on it
yeah,
was a buzz. So I only did a day on it, and all my obviously because my character's dead at the start of the spoiler alert, but she's dead at the start of that
yeah,
season, and so she only exists in in the show
yeah,
as archive footage.
yeah,
So we just basically went and created a load of archive footage of her old news reports and interviews and things like that. But it was still fun to be able to say, you've been in this show
yeah,
that's so well watched and
yeah.
loved, and
Yeah.
it's proper water cooler TV.
Yeah, and you can tell that something of that level is sort of when you can name three parodies, like Dead Ringers did an excellent parody. The I Northern Irish sketch show Dry Your Eyes did a parody where they were trying to pretend to be Ted Hastings and the bit where he's like the wee donkey, but he like went on for like 3 minutes on this one sentence. But it's like she tried to interview someone and just more, and then she would say something, and then it was more and get longer and longer and longer each
Right.
time. And then John Richardson did a Meet the Richardsons episode where he went to go meet Jed Curio and he ended up being drafted like into Line of Duty, but he accidentally upset someone in the crew, so then he was just like he was the killer, and he was just pinned on a pin body instead of actually any of his scenes being in it. And he started watching, going, "That's it, just a photo of me." And then that was it. And because I just think that you can tell when something's popular when enough people want to find ways of making jokes out of it. And
Yeah, true. Yeah.
do you think that sort of helps publicity of a show if there's like jokes and people making like sketches about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, can't see a downside of that. The only time I think that that can go wrong is either A, if it's mean-spirited,
Yeah,
or B, if the thing or person being parodied
yeah,
hates the parody.
yeah,
So you got like Bo Selector, where the wheels kind of came
yeah,
off of that because Craig David did not like the way that he was represented in
yeah,
that show, and so that's when it can go wrong. But I mean, the stuff that people are parodying about Line of Duty, I think probably the Line of Duty creators are like,
yeah,
this is great publicity for us.
yeah, yeah,
The highest form of highest compliment is like imitation, I suppose.
yeah.
So maybe that could be interpreted as that.
Yeah, and I think that. it also represents, I think, it shows that drama can be gritty and can be made outside of your generic places, like having it set. Well, I don't know whether it's, I can't remember now if it's set, but having it in Belfast is sort of like, and
Well, they
having it in
shoot in
Northern Ireland.
Belfast, but
Yeah,
it's set in sort of they call it. I think the police service is Central England Police or something like that. So it's sort of
okay.
set in the Birmingham
Yeah.
area or Nottingham area, but they're not specific about exactly where it
Yeah,
is.
and I think that sort of helps because it means that you can represent different areas. Like Casualty at the moment, because Casualty are trying to make sure that they get more Welsh representation into it, and because they want it, because it's filmed in Wales,
Mm.
which is another brilliant story in itself. But and they're trying to usher it up, so they're trying to make sure that it's like blur the lines of where Holby is now, so then they can make sure that as many people coming through the door are of Welsh talent. And do you think that that sort of helps that area because you, even though a show might not be set in that area and having it filmed in Ireland, do you think that that helps the talent of that place get into it, even though it might not necessarily fit where the show is set?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, look, for probably about 10 years now, the TV industry has been actively decentralizing so that not everything is basically
Yeah,
set in London, which is brilliant for the rest of the country. It's not so great if you live in London because obviously
yeah,
we're traveling a whole lot more now
yeah.
to work.
Mm,
But I mean, that I think that's fair because previously people who lived in other places either they didn't get the opportunities or they were being forced to travel. Everything was happening in London and
yeah,
everything was set in London. So it gives a very singular view of British life when actually obviously that's not the case and people are living very varied lives in different parts of the country and it's great to be able to represent that and hear those accents
mm,
on TV in roles of authority
yeah,
because I mean I did a post about this that I think seemed to capture people's imagination where I was talking about how when someone is when someone's from a particular background or their characters has a is employed in a particular way like there might be something senior like a
yeah,
surgeon or a lawyer or something like that they're often very posh and
yeah,
English, you know, and London, Southeast England, with a Southeast England accent. And I'm like, why? Do you know what I mean? There's
yeah,
lawyers in Belfast, there's surgeons in Manchester who will have those accents. I know that medical school would have beaten that out of them a little bit back in the day, but not everybody. You know, there's going to be some senior folks, some architects who've got a Cardiff accent. So, like, let's start representing that rather than defaulting to this sort of Southeast RP.
yeah, and I think that you sort of see that when because there's a variety of crime dramas now set in different places and different leads, you can sort of say that even though you might not feel connected to the detective because obviously you might not be a detective, but you can sort of feel the connection to the place and where it's set. So like
Yeah.
Ellis on Channel 5 is a good example because
Uh-huh.
it's not set in a particular place; it's set in different places and you get different representation of the victim might be from like Yorkshire one week and Devon the other week and I think
Okay.
it represents that there's other areas of the police that you might not see. So it's Sharon D. Clark and I can't remember the other blokes name, but they're like a duo that just travel around and when they
Mm,
get the call going, oh you need to go and solve this murder because they're useless and then they just rock up and go, woo, let's solve the murder. By the end of it they've arrested someone that didn't expect to be arrested. No one expects to be arrested. But one of the things you've worked on that is the announcement wasn't that long ago that they were filming the next series, and it's one of those shows that is really pretty in a set in the there's a lot of gravel on the floor, but it's really gritty in all senses.
yeah.
But it represents that you can make a more traditional like what the term police procedural is because it's mainly the police rather than a single detective.
Right.
What's it like working on the brilliant but very dark in both the theme of the show and the way it's filmed because a lot of it's darkly lit rooms and the outside world. What's it like working on blue lights?
Oh, so yeah, I mean, whew, it's hard to capture really because when I first came on
Yeah,
for season one, I could see that this was great writing.
yeah,
I had a steep learning curve about Belfast life, Belfast culture, Belfast or Northern Irish
yeah,
history or Northern Ireland history. But we could see that this was a world that was fascinating.
yeah,
I knew that it was a great show, and I think a
yeah,
lot of people felt that were working on it. The thing we didn't know was how it would be received.
yeah,
So I think a lot of my Northern Ireland colleagues felt like people on the mainland wouldn't be so interested in the show
yeah,
because it's so specific. But actually, writers will tell you, or producers, time and time again, that it's the specificity that makes something more
yeah,
interesting. So the fact that it's such a particular world, I think, makes it appeal more. And so, it's been a real honor to be part of something that's over time just gained more and more affection from audiences and who have enjoyed um, not everything the show's
yeah,
done. They're still not over Jerry, but
yeah,
um, have really
yeah,
taken this show to their hearts, taken all the characters to their hearts, and are very vocal about it
yeah,
actually. So as each season's gone on, there's been more and more sort of passion, I guess,
yeah.
for the show, and that is just a real pleasure to be a part of.
Yeah, and I think that it showcases a different side to how you can do a good crime drama because I feel
Mm.
like compared to some others, I think this would be at the end of where it's like you feel more connected to the characters, and I think because it's not spoiling any of the show for anyone that hasn't watched it, but there's certain elements where you're like, oh, I didn't think that that would be possible. So like someone, I am gonna say it, but like someone being like worried that they're not their car's gonna get blown up and they're not gonna be found and protection. And I think
Yeah.
you don't see like other dramas where you don't see the actual police being worried for their own life, even though
Yes.
because
Yeah.
there may not most police people's options are let's go and stop that criminal and they're not really bothered. Well, they might be, but they're not really showing it on their faces. They're too bothered about the consequences if it occurs on them because they're trying to save the
Yeah,
the, the
that's not
people.
what those stories, procedurals or whatever,
Yeah,
they're not about the detective really. They're
yeah,
usually, I mean, that's starting to happen more where you see
yeah,
a little bit more of their own personal lives, but really they're about solving the mystery and the engagement with the audience is about who did it
yeah,
and the red herrings and stuff like that. Whereas Blue Lights is not a procedural, it's about the police service rather than tracking the murder of the week or something
yeah,
like that. It's about the officers and what they're going through.
yeah,
And even though there's artistic license with
yeah,
the level of drama that the officers are experiencing, these are all based, I mean, the writers are journalists.
yeah,
These are all based on things that they've seen, witnessed, written about, that have happened in Belfast life. And they're they've woven that into this story in a really powerful way.
yeah. And when you look at other actors in the world of police, especially in America, I don't know what he's called, but I don't think it matters. But the bloke that is a star of the Rookie. Who he had said on something. I saw that he goes on. He sits in the back of a police car and watch, and whilst the police are going around doing what they're doing and catching criminals. And when you're rehearsing, when you're like researching the role, what sort of techniques have you learned to make sure that what you're doing is as close as you can get it to how, if say for instance, a police from Northern Ireland watching that going, oh, that's me.
Well, I mean, the good thing is we're very lucky in that I think because of the writer's background as journalists, so they're going for telling the truth as much as possible.
Mm.
And because we have these really great police advisors, a lot of officers, not just Northern, like they're called PSNI, a lot, not just PSNI officers, but across the UK comment that they feel like Blue Lights is very realistic,
Yeah,
which is, it's a real honor to hear that. In terms of my own personal research, I think you were referring the actor in The Rookie probably was doing ride-alongs.
yeah,
So you can do that with the Met Police just as a civilian. Not even I didn't mention that I'm an actor or whatever. I just
yeah,
applied for it and went along and did that. Um, Obviously, doing my research on as much as I can on Northern Irish history,
mm,
and we've got these great police advisors to hand. So I'm always asking them questions because I
yeah,
think the more I can make my character Sandra, the more I can make her policing thoughts
Yeah,
second nature, the more I can, more believable I can make her, and more I can contribute to the scene, rather than just playing what's written, adding
yeah,
detail because I've done these ride-alongs, because I've talked to the
yeah.
advisors, because I've done my research.
Yeah, and you mentioned there about how the public can do ride along. Now, I think personally, as an actor, be less traumatized because you read and you research and you learn and the scripts might be a lot more darker than what you've seen. But I do think that some members of the public might get traumatized if accidentally they're in a drug bust and it's gone. Because I think of ride-alongs not just being just, oh yeah, that's a shoplifter. It seems a lot more dramatic, and I think having the general public access to that, I think, is a little bit traumatizing. I mean, it keeps
Well, I
therapy.
mean, look, so that you're not going on, they're very specific about the
Yeah,
types of calls that the
yeah,
officers who are in charge of a member of public
yeah.
go to. So you're not going to some horrific road accident or a
Oh,
murder or
oh god,
something.
oh god.
Yeah, no, I mean, like on the ride along that I did, I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to say, but anyways, it was very low level
Yeah,
stuff. You know, there
yeah.
was a lady had been ripped off by some guy,
Ah,
an older lady. So they were taking details about that, and I think there were some kids who were like going on a frozen lake, and so
yeah,
they went to like try and just warn the kids off.
yeah,
So it's things like that. It's pretty yeah, pretty
yeah,
low level.
yeah.
So
Oh
yeah,
god.
yeah.
I was slightly concerned. Yeah, but I think that when you watch Blue Lights and you compare it to like Line of Duty, you can sort of see why the British public are so enamored by the way it because it's great writing, and I think that it showcases that the traitors isn't the only thing people can like adore over and have at that, as you say, water cool moment. And I think that that's what I think that's what drama is slowly improving on because at the moment, you could be stood in a corridor, and someone could say, "Oh, I've had it happen to me before." Something, "Oh, did you see whatever on the traitors?" It's like. They're all even though I like it, I'm not disagreeing with it, but it's like you should be able to do that with drama. So I think what Blue Lights does really well is that I've been able to be in a situation where I've had conversations with people talking about Blue Lights as an example of, well, if you're doing this, well, I recommend you watching that, and I'm like, oh, I've seen it, and you're able to go, well, that showcases that it's an excellent drama because enough people are now talking about it. Do you think that that's positive for drama that there's shows out there that are generating these water cooler moments so that it's not just reality TV that are getting people talking?
I mean, I think it's good not to sound too grand, but I think it is important for society that we have quality storytelling because we are in a situation where AI is, or the use of AI, should I say, is infiltrating lots of different areas, and a lot of creatives are concerned for what that means. But the fact that shows like Blue Lights and Line of Duty, which are human authored, human created, are really popular, and that at the moment, at least, anyways, it won't be possible for AI to create something like that autonomously.
Yeah,
Um, that's a good thing, and I think we need humans, like mankind, has always needed storytelling. That's how we make sense of the world. So while there's great shows still being made, I think there's kind of hope for us. It sounds a grand thing to say, but I think that, we can't ignore the fact that storytelling is an important part of who we are as people. That's why it's been around us for so long.
yeah. And stepping away from TV for a brief moment, but one of the things you've done outside of the world TV that is a growing market by the day, and when I say by the day, I mean probably it's like they say that there's one born every minute. I think there's one podcast generated every minute. I'm
Right.
gonna say that
Yeah.
because that probably I don't know where, but it probably is true. But
Yeah.
there's like a rafter. You can see your top 20 favorite podcasts of all time, and there's excellent people creating podcasts. I'm not disagreeing with the podcast world. It's like everything. Eventually, it becomes a lot of it. But where did the idea
Mm.
for your excellent podcast come from?
So I have a podcast called Creative Source where I just basically talk about different as aspects of being a creative. It's like, what's the word? Yeah, different aspects of being a creative. And it's really to inspire, I guess,
Yeah,
other creatives to keep going because it can
yeah,
feel, depending on what you're doing, it can feel very solitary. So I wanted to provide a space and a conversation, me to them,
yeah.
of that provides some inspiration, I guess, so that they don't feel so alone in what they're doing and they reconnect with why they're doing it in the first place.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that what your podcast does is it represents that there's ways into creativity and people can be inspired by most things, and I think that's what's good about about podcasting. That there is the other one I can think of is Sitcom Geeks, which is another one that does that thing as well, where it's like you learning whilst listening, but
Right.
you're not just learning from a point of oh that's a great educational tool, but you're learning going and it makes your brain move in other ways. Like you then think creative creatively about it. And do you think that that's what you've noticed the positivity and what you've noticed with your podcast is that it's helped other creatives go, well, I was in a rut or whatever the creatives use as that term. Um, and then like and then you listen to something like your podcast and like oh that do you think that that's the a positive step you've been seeing from listeners?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the feedback's been positive because people are saying, I was struggling with this particular thing that you're
Yeah,
talking about. I might talk about rejection
yeah,
or where your inspiration comes from or discipline or something like that. And they'll say, gosh, I needed to hear that today. And that's really validating to know that the conversation that I'm having, the thoughts that I'm sharing are landing with people in a way that's kept them motivated, kept
yeah.
them engaged with whatever it is that they're working on and feel able to overcome whatever struggles or obstacles that are in their way.
Yeah, and I think that having that out there and having more people now discussing their creative journey and why that they're at the point they're at and being open about the fact that there is struggles like rejection. Do you think that that sort of represents the industry a lot more than like if someone like when you saw it before probably the way these things worked before where people weren't as open saying about, oh, I've had X amount of rejections on such things. Do you think that it's positive now that people are open about talking about having rejection and what and why that this industry is about not being upset about every rejection and being more
Mhm.
resilient to the rejection, but understanding why they've said no.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're talking specifically about rejection, then
Mm,
yeah, it's really important that people understand that this is happening to everybody. It may feel personal, but it's not. It is literally across the board. And that actually, as uncomfortable as it is, rejection is an important part of the process. It's not adjacent to the process, it is the process. If you look at anybody in any industry, creatively that you admire, they will have experienced a good handful of rejection. And if they haven't, then it is likely that at some point they will encounter other problems because they'll have an expectation of what they're due, as it were, in their industry, and that will create its own set of problems. So rejection is an incredibly healthy thing to go through. It just icks a bit at the time. But once you get over that feeling, and it will also, if it hurts, it shows you care. So if you can relate to it in that way, then that can help sort of overcome that experience.
yeah, and one of the other things that you've worked on that was, and they're always every version of this writer's adaptations are
Mm,
always really hugely successful. And there is those people that question why have they moved the TV show to Britain when the book was set in, let's say, New
mm.
York.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Which I haven't heard an explanation, but there probably is a very good explanation. But it helps British drama. But what was it like working on The Incredibles? Stay close.
I wasn't on it for very long. It was fine. It was kind of, I didn't have a lot of scenes with a lot of people. I think my only scenes were with like James Nesbitt and
Yeah,
Joe Joyner, and then I had one or two scenes with Richard Armitage, and that was
yeah,
it. So it was fine. I mean, I like you thought it was very interesting that these books set elsewhere were relocated. The adaptations were
yeah,
relocated to the UK, but it is what it is. And I think they're incredibly popular novels, right? And so
yeah,
the
yeah,
TV adaptations are really popular too. And I think what they've aimed for in terms of the production is even though it's UK based, that it's sort of got a slightly generic feel to it,
Yeah,
so that it could be not anywhere because
yeah,
obviously it's clearly the UK, but that it has an international
yeah,
appeal. So I guess that's how that has worked. But yeah, it is an interesting thing that they've chosen to do that. But
yeah.
look, it's worked. They've been hugely successful, these adaptations.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that when you watch, let's say an Agatha Christie, you have Miss Marple, but you have multiple different stories that Miss Marple gets into, or Vera, whereas like the books are not technically called the Vera Mysteries or whatever. The name different, but it's the Detective and Vera. And I think that when you think of Harlan Coben's TV adaptation, majority of them star Jim Nesbitt and Richard Armitage. And
Yeah.
I think that that sort of represents that they might all be connected. They might all be the same universe
Right.
where and it might be because obviously Richard Armitage, I mean, he's an excellent actor, but you can sort of see the similarity between each of the characters. And why do you think that those type of novels and those type of series are so popular? Do you think it's because people love crime and crime drama, or do you think it's because that it's the writing is so unique because it's even though it's the books were set in like New York or Alabama or wherever, but they're now relocated. Do you think that that's why it's so popular because you can sort of it feels slightly different than
I
what you
think
can normally
probably,
see.
yeah, he writes interesting characters, but also, with crime, people are really drawn in because if it's well written, you're you're engaged with the story because you're trying to get ahead of where the writer is. And a well-written crime, the writer is drip feeding out
Yeah,
information, sometimes giving you wrong information, and so that's having you trying to, as the reader, processing what's
yeah,
going on. So I think that's why crime, where there's a mystery,
yeah,
is so popular, and I think that's probably what he does really well. I haven't actually read any of his books,
yeah.
but as they're so hugely popular, I would imagine that that's probably part of the appeal as well.
And I do think the one problem I think we encounter, especially now that you can watch them all in one go, is the fact that you hear stories of people saying, "Oh, I started watching this new thing, and I was so annoyed because I needed to go to bed, but I wanted to see one more." Do you think that that's a problem within TV because it's everything that at once, and it means that if you don't watch it all right now, three people are probably gonna spoil it for you in the next four in the next time you open your phone.
Well, that's very handy for the streamers that we think that. I mean, for me, I'm not bothered about things like that. Like I was into Stranger Things, but I still haven't watched the most recent season of
Yeah,
it, and no one's spoiled it. I mean, and if I do, then so be it. If I
yeah,
do encounter a spoiler, so be it. But I mean, one of the things the streamers, I guess, are really good at, particularly Netflix, who produce their own stuff, is making sure that at the end of each episode, when you see that 15 seconds to start
yeah,
of new episode 14, 13, that you're just like, oh,
yeah,
one more. They're
yeah,
very good at structuring episodes so that you feel like that.
yeah,
Um, I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing because that is, we're riding a dopamine wave that isn't sustainable
yeah,
by doing that, and the way we encounter social media, but
yeah.
we are where we are with it.
Yeah, and what I quite like is when you're not really looking at that clock and then you have a conversation and you're like, what do we watch it? Do we watch it? And then it just plays on, you go, well, we're gonna have to watch it now. Yeah,
We are where we are.
that happens more often and you start in the situation like, we need to go to bed. Oh, we don't get up early enough. We've got loads of stuff to do. Oh, look, it's started playing. Oh, let's see what
Yeah.
la la la. Hello. Now it's 2 o'clock in the morning. We've got work in the morning. And I think that happens more often. And I think that when you have like a Harlan Coben thing, I think that that's fine because I think the pace of it, in my opinion, sort of works really well as a if you watch it back to back. And I think shows like Blue Lights, even though in my opinion, if someone dangles it in front of me, going, you can watch it now. I then can't wait and I have to watch it now. Which is probably a slight problem because I do quite like the idea of watching things weekly, but if it's dangled in front of me, I'm not gonna not do it. But I think that for blue lights that works so well weekly because you can sort of you feel that you're a part of something, and I think when you then see it on Gogglebox, it proves the point that it's not just you and it's not that you and might be like three other colleagues that have seen this thing. It's like it's momentous enough, and that moment was shocking enough for the Gogglebox people to go, that's incredible. We need them to see it. And do you think
Mm.
that's positive about British TV, that there's enough moments on TV that make it add on? It makes it into shows like Gogglebox where they're always reacting to the most dramatic moments of that week's telly.
I think it's really good that dramas and narrative TV makes it into Gogglebox because um, so it's not all about reality
Yeah,
TV moments, and it speaks to, creators' ability to create moments that
yeah,
are water cooler worthy or
yeah,
Gogglebox worthy.
yeah,
So I think that's definitely a positive thing when narrative, where scripted TV shows
yeah.
end up in a show like that.
Yeah, and I think I read somewhere that some person, I can't remember who, said, "Oh, I'm right. They were working on some show, and they were hoping that it'd become a Gogglebox worthy moment. They were writing it just to try and get it onto Gogglebox."
Right.
And I think that's incredible because it says that they're writing something that they know is trying to be the best it can be, but they're also trying to hope that you get it on because the Gogglebox it's been on for so long, but it's still momentous, and people still go, well. A lot of the things, there's a few shows like Celebrity Haunted House you wouldn't necessarily watch, but you would watch on Gogglebox because it's like you're curious enough. You're not curious enough to press play yourself. You're curious enough to watch it through someone else's eyes. But I think what
Mm.
Gogglebox has done well for me personally is it's showcased shows that I wouldn't have thought about watching before, like
Mm.
dramas, and then I've gone to watch it and gone, that's incredible. I don't care that I've seen enough of it to spoil it on Gogglebox, but now I'm watching on my own and going, that is better than I thought. I thought it didn't sound right good before, but now I've seen a clip of it. It's gone. It's another thing. And do you think that's what's going to help drama forwards? Is that there's enough avenues for people to see bits of it and go, that's actually that looks amazing, rather than because some titles might not capture the imagination of someone
Well,
as well as a
it's a
clip.
good another way to, it's a good other outlet for sure, in terms of giving a different type of audience access to a show that they may never have heard of. I don't know if we need more of that. Maybe. I mean, on Blue Lights, the publicity team did the in-house, the BBC publicity team
Yeah,
did a really great job with their social media, and they clipped quite a lot
yeah,
of moments from Blue Lights that captured the imagination, and I think and people's attention. And there was a lot of I was looking at some of the comments on them, and so a lot of people are like, what is this show,
yeah,
where is this being broadcast? Oh, I can't get it in my country, that type of thing.
yeah,
So there's definitely, I think you're right in that producers probably need to innovate in terms of
yeah,
how they give people access to their show and find out about it, other than just the
yeah,
traditional trailers on BBC One or whatever for BBC One shows. They're going to have to innovate. But as to what that looks like, who knows? Because it's the Wild West at the moment.
yeah. And so, as we draw a close to this excellent, extraordinary, wonderful dictionary defining interview, um, this is your opportunity to, because I know that there's a lot of, and you probably know there's a lot more than I'm making out, like a lot of NDAs knocking about. So it's like
Mm,
things you're not allowed to say, like,
hmm.
like, which is sometimes could annoy people because some people then might get confused of what are they allowed to say and not. But
Mm,
what
mm.
upcoming projects or things have you got coming up that you're excited for people to read, see, or hear that you are allowed to talk about?
So for me, it's really the book, which is out at the moment, and then season 4 of Blue Lights.
Yeah,
That's where all my attention is at the moment because we're filming at the moment.
yeah,
We're not even halfway through yet, so we've still got quite a bit to get, and the scripts are amazing. So I'm really looking forward to the episodes being out there,
yeah,
but also hoping that people love these episodes as much as we do because it's such fantastic material to work with. So the hope is always that it lands as well with the public as it has with us, and that we've done our job as creatives, not just the cast, but everybody, that we've done our jobs in interpreting this in a way that makes it as compelling as it feels like it could be.
yeah. And so there we have it. An excellent interview. Now, finally, where can people track you down online?
Online, well, I've got my own little website, but otherwise, social media, I'm at the Andi Osho. So it's with a W on the end, on Facebook and Instagram, and I'm even on LinkedIn. Not that I post there very often, but like, yeah.
Yeah, and so there we have it. Another glorious interview. Yes, I will say that because I can. No one can argue because if you didn't agree, well, why are you still here? So it's all preference. So if I want to be narcissistic, well, I can cry about it later. But thank you guys for watching. Remember, no, I've forgotten.